Hi friends, welcome to Tech Harvesting. In today's video, we'll have a look at the three new CSS properties that are here to replace the transform property. So the three new properties are translate, scale, and rotate. So before these three properties, we used to just use the transform property. So that we used to use all scale, rotate, and translate within the transform property, and it used to get quite confusing. So now with these three new properties, we can just use all of them separately and use them whenever we need. So let's have a look at each of them separately right now. Let's get started. So to get started, I've created two files here, an index.html and a style.css. So in the index.html, I've created three divs, one called translate, one called scale, and one called rotate. And this is an empty CSS file, which I've linked to in the HTML file. Let's have a look at how we used to do it before all these three new properties arrived. So I'm going to give a .test div, and let's select it, .test, and let's give a background color of red, a width of 500 pixels, and a height of 500 pixels. Next, to start my server, so I'm going to open it with live server. As you can see, it's there in here. So first, let's have a look at the first transform property, which is the scale property. So we give the scale in here and give 1.5. We use it like a JavaScript function, which looks like that, and it scales it in here. So there are more options to this, like you can give scale Y as 1.5, and then it only scales in the y-axis. As you can see, the x-axis remains the same. Just like that, there's also scale X, where it changes only the x-axis. That's scale. Then there's translate, for example 30 pixels, and translate is used to move it. So as you can see, it went 30 pixels from the left, and you can have more options for this also. So you can have, if I remove this, translate X, translate Y, translate Z. So if I give translate Y 50 pixels, it'll move 50 pixels downwards, so there's 50 pixels gap here. And there's even rotate, so rotate, I can give 40 degrees. So DEG is the unit for rotation, so it's in degrees, and as you can see, it rotates and it's working like that. But for this, for example, if you want to do rotate, transform, and everything, it gets really confusing. So translate, everything should be done. Only this transform property, it gets confusing. So that's where all these new properties come into use. Let's start with the translate property. So in here, first let's select the transform div, so .transform, and in here I meant on translate, and in here we can just go ahead and move this div, and I'll also give a background color of red, and let's also give some width and height, so width of 30 pixels and a height of 30 pixels or 20 pixels. So that seems a bit small. Let's make it 300 and 200. So there you go. So that's how it looks right now. So we want to move it to a particular side. So for that, we're going to use the translate property. So we translate and give the pixels how much we want to translate. So for example, we can translate 50 pixels. Now if we head back here, you can see that it moved a bit to the right. So it translated 50 pixels towards the right, and the gap here is 50 pixels. Another thing we can do, for example, is if we want to move this even downwards, since we're just moving to the right now, we can also give 50 pixels again, and it moves 50 pixels bottom also. So we can have 0 there, and it goes back here, but it keeps the 50 pixels spacing at the top. So that's what we can do with the translate property that's new in CSS. Next, let's have a look at the scale property. So for that, I'm going to copy this and paste it down in here. I'm going to change this color just for understanding, and then we can just go into the property. So I'm going to rename this to scale, and the scale is what I named this div here. The second div is called the scale. So in here we can give scale, and for example we can give 1.5. If I go back to my browser, you can see it's 1.5 times the size of the actual thing. So if I were to comment this, it looks like that. It looks like that. And if I were to uncomment it, it adds 0.5% of its 50% of its size onto it. So if I were to give 2 in here, it doubles its size and shows up like that. So if I were to give 24, for example, it just goes on the entire screen. So whatever its size is, it multiplies on top of that. So for example, instead of 300 pixels, it was just 30 pixels and 20 pixels. Then as you can see, it looks like that. But if I were to change this, for example, 40, it looks like that. So according to the size of the actual object and what we specify here, it'll scale according to that. Before, again, you had to use the transform property and give scale, and you had to give all the values here. So this is a much easier way to do it. Next, let's have a look at the rotate property. So I'm again going to copy this and paste in here, name it rotate, and change the color again. Oops. And the rotate property this time is not a very simple property. Like these two properties, we just had to, for the scale and translate, we just gave the numbers and it worked. Here also we just have to give the numbers, but there are a few more options that we can use. For example, I can give rotate, I can give 50 degrees with the unit. And if you come back here, you can see that this rectangle is rotated at 50 degrees. You can also give negative 50 degrees and it rotates in the opposite direction. Now, right now we can see it's rotating in the z-axis. So as you know, there are x, y, and z-axis, and it's rotating in the z-axis. So for example, if I give y space and give that, it rotates in the x-axis, and as you can see, it's gotten smaller, and that's because of the way it's looking like in the y-axis. Even if we give it at the x-axis, it'll look a bit different, as you can see. But its actual shape is there in the z-axis, and this is how it looks like. So that's how we can do simple rotation. Now there's also this kind of a 3D matrix look where we can give. So for example, if I were to give some numbers and a degree, so 50 degrees, you can see it got this stretch 3D effect. So you can change these numbers in here. So these are the different axes like x, y, and z. So if I were to make the 29, you can see it looks like that, and you can change the degree. So you can get kind of funky with this, and it's a really funny thing you can do.
So that was it for this video. Thanks for watching, and if you did find the video helpful, make sure to subscribe to my channel. It'll support me and help me to create more videos. And also like the video and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye friends.